floating camera makes its way through a room painted in bright primary colors, one that could be inhabited by a toddler if not for the young adult who soon comes into view. As the camera makes its way around our subject, the focus shifts to something in the background. A doting mother watching as her whole world packs up a box to leave, and with it, taking a piece of herself. As the camera cuts closer to the teary-eyed mother, we begin to see her take in the memories of a life fully lived with her child who is now a man, and fear soon takes over. The opening of Munchausen by Ari Aster sets the table for a sort of fairy tale, but this is a world where the possibility of gaining independence, going off to college, and finding a wife isn't as much of a fairy tale as it is a falsehood. Ari Aster knows about writing overbearing mothers. However, to boil Bonnie Bedelia's portrayal of a poison-wielding mother faced with the decision to either see her son off to college or to force sickness upon him to keep him by her side, down to overbearing, would be a gross oversimplification. This 2013 short film has no dialogue and is set entirely to music, yet the mother's fear of loneliness creeps through just the same. The mother sits in her cold living room with her husband, who is shown more in his own world than showing his wife affection. When a memory floods in with her son, the lights shift. Her world turns warm, and for a second, the idea that everything is okay is something that has manifested itself right there at her fingertips. Why would she ever let that go away? She acts flippantly on her fear, making her son sick so that he will be forced to stay at home with her. This is where the real horror kicks in. A son who cannot keep down neon green vomit, a mother rushing through the halls late at night at the sound of his coughing, floral wallpaper filling the screen as a music sting comes to a crescendo. The horror lies in her decision, a decision she could never take back no matter how hard she tried and how deeply she begged for it. Her son's corpse lay cold in a coffin because she could not dare face the possibilities. The last shot of the son's childhood action figure lying in a dying flower garden pushes in slowly from above. A boy dead from his mother's love. Aster has cemented himself as a leading voice in modern horror and one of the most significant auteurs to develop in recent years. His films have a track record of bold direction, strong visuals, and unique stories. They also have one thing in common: they deal with complex and difficult human emotions, and that alone is its own horror. Aster made his feature film debut with 2018's Hereditary, a horror film as much as it is a family drama and a stark generational shift in modern horror. Hereditary follows a grieving family who is haunted by a demonic entity following the loss of their mysterious grandmother. This film follows the same track as many of Aster's films. He has an interest in uncovering the hidden emotions of individuals, the things that took root in someone's subconscious due to family, traumas, and circumstances which fester and grow until they are threatening to erupt. The title provides us with much of the information that he explores in the film. What are the things passed on from parent to offspring that cannot be controlled? In the opening shot, we move through an art studio full of miniature pieces, pushing in on a dollhouse until one room fills the screen, the dollhouse becoming the space that our characters occupy. This is the first indication of what we are to uncover emotionally: a lack of control. The feeling that someone is always above planning out your next move. Our main character is Annie, a mother of two who has recently experienced the loss of her own mother. In an early scene, Annie outlines the distant relationship with her mother, explaining her deep history with mental illness and loss. Her mother had dissociative identity disorder and dementia. Her father had psychotic depression, which caused him to starve himself when Annie was only a baby, and her older brother had schizophrenia and hung himself at the age of 16. Immense loss in context for our lead, and at the root of it all, she finds herself to blame. The conflict between Annie and her mother is the driving force in the film. I want to take a moment to relate this to the psychological concept of the archaic mother, a psychoanalytic influence rife in horror, but also in many of Aster's works. In horror, the archaic mother is often used as a monstrous form, terrorizing and playing on innate castration fears. In Barbara Creed's book, The Monstrous Feminine, she describes the archaic mother. The archaic mother is parthenogenetic mother, the mother as primordial abyss, the point of origin and of end. This Freudian psychoanalytic theory is concerned with the mother of infancy, the one of socialization that gives to and raises a child, oftentimes playing on the fear of being destroyed by what created you. Annie's mother is a clear representation of an archaic mother. The story is concerned primarily with the things passed down generationally, things that are outside of our control. The archaic mother in Hereditary is unseen, yet she has a firm hold on every event that occurs, moving around characters like Annie gently placing the dolls in her miniatures. This is juxtaposed with Annie's own internalized fear of motherhood. During a nightmare sequence, these fears are explored in the following dialogue with her son, Peter.
I never wanted to be your mother.
Why?
I was scared. I didn't feel like a mother. But she pressured me.
Then why did you have me?
It wasn't my fault. I tried to stop it.
How?
I tried to have a miscarriage.
How?
However I could. I did everything they told me not to do, but it didn't work. I'm happy it didn't work.
You tried to kill me.
I love you.
Why did you try to kill me?
I did. I was trying to save you.
Why did you try to kill me?
The scene ends with the two characters covered in paint thinner and set on fire, a piece of recurring symbolism based on the revelation that Annie once covered herself and her children in paint thinner in an attempt to kill them and herself. This plays further into Annie's lack of control over her life, only becoming a mother because of pressure from her own maternal figure. Peter's response in this sequence is also a continued example of the archaic mother, as he exhibits castration fear and more generally castration anxiety, which leads to a tremulous relationship between mother and son. Mary Kelly describes the way castration fear manifests itself in women in her article, Women Desire Image. When Freud describes castration fears for the woman, this imaginary scenario takes the form of losing her loved objects, especially her children. The child is going to grow up, leave her, reject her, perhaps die. In order to delay, disavow that separation she has already in a way acknowledged, the woman tends to fetishize the child by dressing him up, by continuing to feed him no matter how old he gets, or simply by having another little one. Therefore, we can assume that Annie's castration anxiety is connected to the control her mother has over her children and the fear that she will influence them in some way. She explains that she would never let her near Peter, but when her second child, Charlie, was born, she allowed her mother to be a part of the child's life. With this information, we can conclude that Annie's castration at the hands of the archaic mother was successful upon Charlie's death. Charlie's death is the catalyst for Annie's downfall. It is the singular event that causes her to be overtaken by grief and for her to lose all foresight, causing her to fall directly into her mother's Machiavellian posthumous plot and allowing for evil to enter her home and family. These emotions are so strong that they control every aspect of her life. Annie unwittingly assists in her own transition into an archaic mother, represented by her possession and subsequent attack on Peter towards the end of the film. Midsommar is an intriguing succeeding addition in Aster's roster. In many ways, it's as if Aster wanted to move away from his previous film in every way that he could in terms of style, but all of the thematic richness is still present. Midsommar follows an American couple's journey with a group of friends to Sweden for a midsummer festival. The conceit is simple enough, and this time around Aster trades out complicated familial emotions for domestic dysfunction. However, he still inspects the way that trauma can affect personal relationships, this time putting a magnifying glass on the idea of loneliness versus community in the process of healing. The first shot we see is a beautiful painting that instantly tells the audience they are about to enter a dark, Gothic fairy tale. A haunting melody backed up by harp strings sets the stage for the story to come. The painting outlines every story beat. A young woman suffering immense loss goes on an adventure and finds community, ending triumphantly. It acts as a dark prophecy of sorts. Danny has just experienced a traumatic event. Her sister has what appears to be a psychotic break and, according to Danny, is in the midst of a bipolar episode when she murders both of their parents and subsequently commits suicide. Danny lays on the couch in the arms of her boyfriend, who considered ending their relationship hours before, letting out a gut-wrenching scream that breaks through the stratum of our hearts. This is only the beginning of our story. we're left to watch Danny put the pieces back together of a life seemingly without hope. This film is a great marker of Aster's work in visual storytelling. Ari Aster uses movement of the camera in such intelligent ways, never settling for a simple push-in or an expected zoom, but always using intentional choice to express camera movement as an extension of the filmic language. In a scene between Danny and her boyfriend, he is shown in the reflection of the mirror in the darkness, while Danny is shown standing beside the mirror in a warm light. A later scene shows Danny and her boyfriend framed in a reflection, while the group of friends sit across them on a couch in opposition. At the end of the scene, when Danny is reminded of her family's death, she begins to break down. We cut to an overhead shot as she rushes away to the bathroom, choosing not to stay with her emotions, but to serve as God's eye, an objective look in at her frayed mental state. This is the unique sandbox that Aster plays in, an intelligently abstract look at big emotions. He often changes a character's position in the frame to represent an altered emotional state. His camera exists on an expressionistic plane, serving as our eye into the story and a peek into the complex feelings that inhabit them. Beau is Afraid is maybe Aster's most complete demonstration of craft thus far in his career. An extension of an early career short, Beau is Afraid follows an anxiety-ridden man named Beau who goes on an epic journey to attend his recently deceased mother's funeral. What's interesting to evaluate is the inception of ideas that were able to take their full form 12 years later. In Beau, the titular character is on his way to the airport to visit his mother when his luggage and keys are stolen out of his door after he leaves them momentarily. Without a key and unable to make his flight, the next sequence of events is an anxiety that evolves into paranoia. His mother berates him for not being able to make the visit, and he goes through all manners of trouble to secure his home from the evils of the world he's convinced himself are against him. In the end, when finally asking his mother for a ride home, it's revealed that she is really some fur-clad monster. Practically the entire short is adapted into the feature film Beau is Afraid, serving as the seed from which the rest of the journey grows. Only the mother here is a different sort of monster. She is Mona Wasserman, a wealthy businesswoman responsible for a large conglomerate empire. For much of the film, she isn't seen, much like in Hereditary, but her presence here is felt through her phone calls with Beau and through the character himself. Beau is a result of having been raised by Mona. His anxiety, his depression, and his paranoia are all tied to her overbearingness and tight control of his life as a child and adult. She is another example of the archaic mother, a monster made from her own fear of losing him. The feature film expands on the inkling of a story from the short film and takes it all further, without fear of jumping into the waters of the surreal. Aster creates an out-of-the-box world for Beau to inhabit. Everything that stems from this story, every conflict, every character interaction, everything is a manifestation of Beau's anxieties. It's as if Aster posed the question, what if the entire world was out to get you? And there begins our story. In Aster's latest film, Eddington, he tackles a new emotion, fear. In his fourth feature film, Aster decides to take a look to the distant past, at the very beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic in the US, and the subsequent lockdowns and cultural and political explosion in the summer of 2020. Aster decides to continue the maximalist and overwhelming filmmaking he perfected on Beau is Afraid, this time deciding to hone in on the American Western, following a standoff between small-town Sheriff Joe Cross and Mayor Ted Garcia. This conflict is one of ideals. Aster creates methodical chaos out of the confused emotions of scared individuals. On the periphery, there are huge waves of change. Mayor Garcia is planning for a data plant to move into Edington, and just as he nears locking down these plans, a mysterious new illness moves into town. Aster perfectly encapsulates this confusion, cleverly posing Joe Cross as the savior sheriff trying to protect his town, for better and for worse. His own refusal and fear paralyzes his ability to grow and fuels his own savior complex. Meanwhile, there is a political awakening happening. After the death of George Floyd, young citizens of Eddington begin taking to the streets in solidarity with the rest of the nation in protest, causing even more strife and misunderstanding between individuals, which leads to an explosive conclusion. What Aster gets so right about this film, and about revisiting this time that wasn't so long ago, is the explosive and destructive nature of misunderstanding, and allowing difference to stand in the way of communication, all rooted in fear. In an interview with Letterboxd, Aster says that Eddington is a Western, but instead of guns, the characters have phones. The entire story takes place through screens. This cold barrier between characters and reality that adds fuel to the fire. It's no surprise to me that a filmmaker who is so fascinated by emotions and uncovering emotional states decided to make a film about this time where emotions ran so high, and where our fear of the circumstances and the situations that we lived in led to an individualism that tore us all apart. Finally, I want to take a look at one of Aster's early short films, 2014's Basically, a hypnotic showcase of existential dread. An actress, Shandy Pickles, walks the viewers through the highs and lows of her privileged life. Much of the short consists of wide shots where Shandy monologues directly to the camera. In juxtaposition to Munchausen, which is a film with no dialogue, this is a film that's only monologue. Aster uses Shandy's positioning in the foreground as opposed to side characters hanging in the background or on the edges to show her superiority complex. She is completely superficial, a stock version of an LA actress not interested in anything you have to say. The writing is snappy. In many shots, she shares personal details like her parents' ugly divorce and the way her Renaissance man father left them for an environmentalist in Maui. As she strolls through her home, people wash windows from outside, or a homeless man strolls up and stares. This is just her world and we're living in it. As we journey deeper into the story, a character who is interested in the world at large is revealed. She has deep, existential questions, and though many are superficial, they open her up to ask questions that resemble something real. In one scene, she shares with the audience a tale of an artist ex-boyfriend who she left. What starts as a story told with annoyance evolves into a moment of vulnerability. The same ex reveals to her he has leukemia. A wall is broken down, and we see a glimmer of a real person, a person concerned with someone other than herself. She corrects herself, ashamed of showing a real emotion. She exists in a world that is full of ego and selfishness, a world that is uninterested in uncovering emotions. The last shot of the short, we see her through a mirror, and she retells the story of being in her high school's play. She explains that at one point in the second act, she felt all of her ego and self-consciousness fall away. She was lifted out of herself. Empathy? The audience wonder if that's the feeling she struggles to put words to. Then she ponders.
Is that even possible, to just take that feeling and live in it? Or is the chase just the whole thing?
This is the question that ends the film, and a question that makes Aster's filmography so richly intriguing. He explores characters with big emotions, varying mental states, and they all chase happiness, or rather an escape from all the emotions that ail them. Annie, Danny, Beau, Joe, and Shandy are all stuck in their emotional state and are rarely seen in a true state of happiness. Instead, what makes these characters so interesting is watching their pursuit as they attempt to avoid the loads of grief, trauma, and mental illness on their trail. The embodiment of these things, the other in these films, is where horror exists. And the reason why we connect so much with these pieces is because they are the same evils that stand between us and our own happiness every day.